Okay, I am super excited for this interview today. We have the one and only Cathy Haddad. We actually went to grade school together, and now our paths cross again in the real estate world. So, Cathy is a rock star wife, mom of two girls, senior VP of lending with guaranteed rate. 20 years in the business. That doesn't even seem possible.
Wow.
20 years in the business and ranked top 100 loan originators in the country for the past 9 years. Real estate investor, world traveler, all other kinds of good stuff. So, Cathy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course, we really appreciate it. So, let's just jump right in and let's talk about your background and your journey and talk about how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so I mean, it's funny, me and other mortgage professionals, we always joke that it was never a dream of anyone to wake up and say, I want to be a mortgage, loan officer as my career. It just kind of, you fall into it.
Yeah.
And I was basically, 19 years old, and I didn't have a college degree or anything. I wasn't in college, and I was working at a construction company, knowing that I just wanted more for myself. And I was kind of like this pretty much dead end job. And I knew that I had more to offer. And I wanted to get into kind of an entrepreneurial kind of role, but just didn't know where to go or how to go about doing that. And kind of stumbled upon a person I was working with. His fiance ran a mortgage company, and he was just like, look, you're great at what you do. You're great at numbers. You're good with people. You should maybe talk to her, and can't hurt to just hear her out and see what she has to say. And so that's what I did. And here I am
Okay.
20 years later.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was really exciting. Like my first year, I made President's Club, and, from there on, just continued to just hustle and, get into the top of my industry, which has been a great journey, and love what I do.
In your first full-time year, you were what, 20 years old?
Yeah, I couldn't even
Wow.
drink. I remember I would be at a bar at happy hours, and people were like, "Hey, do you want a glass of wine?" And I'd be like, "No, I can't." I would never want to tell anyone that I'm not 21 years old yet. So
Wow.
it was pretty funny.
So, Cathy, let's dig into that a little bit more before we go into some of the other questions and stuff that I
Mhm.
want to talk about with you. So, how did you do that, right? So, President's Club, for people that are listening and don't know what it was, I won it at Verizon. It's a very prestigious award. It puts you in the top of the country, and it really puts you on a pedestal. And it also means that you make a lot of money because you had a lot of closings, right? Or you closed a lot of deals. So, coming from the construction business and basically fresh out of high school, how in the world were you able to put together that much business? Like, was this an inbound call center, or were you just like relationship crazy and you were going out and making it happen? How'd that happen?
Yeah, so no, it wasn't an inbound. It wasn't like telemarketing type of company. It was, referral based, and they gave you a very small draw, and they say, get out there and figure it out. And that's exactly what I did. I learned very quickly that this business is a relationship business. And the more people, it's a numbers game. The more people you tap into, the more people you reach out to, the more that you're marketing yourself and you're out there and letting everybody in the world know that you're a mortgage professional, is what helps. And in that time frame, while I was out every day, meeting financial planners, realtors, divorce attorneys, you name it, I was in front of them. I was leaving my cards at restaurants. If there was a place that I would eat every day, I would give them my card. If I heard someone talking about a mortgage and I'm sitting at the table next to them, I would go over to them and pass them my card. So
I love
whatever
it.
I could do to get my name out there. That was obviously way before social media. It was really just, face to face. You'd have to go out and meet people and see people and be personable and find ways to connect, which I think is, it's hard to do. But if you have ways to learn about people, be a great listener, and, have a likable kind of personality, it really gets people to want to, work with you.
Yeah, likability is huge. And I find that just in every aspect of sales, the more likable that you are, or the more likable you can learn to become, it's just like you're a magnet and an attraction to sales and opportunities. And
Definitely.
it's also kind of like what you put out there, right? So I've been talking to a bunch of people that are looking to sell businesses, and I'm having a lot of those conversations. All of a sudden, it's like, this one wants to sell a company. That I'm like, well, so everybody slow down here.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so that first year you hit President's Club. And do you remember, or do you recall how many units sold or how many deals closed or families served, however you want to look at it? How many was that approximately?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was like 15 million, if
Okay.
I'm not mistaken. I think that's what it was my first year. And which, for the first year, that's not realistic, right?
Yeah, of
But
course.
it was just, making sure that I was just coming in and getting files, and I was even calling past clients that of loan officers that were no longer at the company. On my spare time, I would ask the branch manager, like, can I make calls and reach out and see if these people want to refinance or get a cash out refinance to purchase an investment property or buy a second home. And, I was just like getting on there, just trying to find any way that I can extra business.
So, Cathy, talk to the person right now that's maybe they're at that age and they're listening to the podcast and they want to be you or they want to be in that position because no offense to the younger generation coming up, but it seems like a vast majority of them, they just don't want to grind that hard or they think that it's going to come a little bit easier than it actually is, especially with the current environment that we're in right now. So what would you say to that person that wants to go out and just kill it and they're hearing what you're saying and maybe they're 19 or 20 or 21? What did it take to get to that level? Was it just pure tenacity? Like
Yeah,
must have a drive or a hunger
yes.
to make that happen, right?
Yes. Well, I had to succeed. I didn't have a plan B. And I think that
That's the key. That's the key.
I didn't have a plan B. And so for me, I had to find a way to succeed and make it work. So my drive, my passion, my work ethic, which I give a lot to my dad. I just saw how hard he worked. I think is what helped drive me to push myself so hard to the point where I was working 12, 14-hour days, 7 days a week for many, many years before, now it's a little different. I have a little bit of a different setup. But prior to that's exactly what I had to do to try and make myself become a successful loan originator.
Yeah, so you
And
crammed like the proverbial like 20 years of work in a decade probably, and then now you're able to start to enjoy a lot of those fruits of the labor, right?
absolutely. I mean, the way I work now is a little differently. It's hard, but it's different kind of hard. It's just my setup is a lot different, but it's definitely what got me here is all those years of, you know, hard work.
Okay, so let's talk about what happened in 2007 and 2008, right? So I'm assuming the first few years you thought that like Cathy's just going to crush it. It's the world's just going to keep going this way. What was that like going through that time? And then also, do you notice any differences or any similarities to what we're currently dealing with now?
Yeah. So, it's so funny when I was very new to the business a couple years and, I didn't know any differently. I'm like, oh, this is what it's like. It's great. It's easy to make money and, you can just get out there and there's business everywhere. Well, I learned very quickly that changes and some of it is in your control. And then there's also market and the
Yeah.
market you can't control. So, one of the things it taught me is that, you can only focus on what you can control. Make the
Mm-hmm.
changes, do what you can to control the things that you can. And it was just I had to go and reinvent the wheel. I had to rebuild myself. I had to find different ways to bring in additional income as far as, getting out there and just building on what I've already built. Because a lot of my realtors left the business. They were no
Yeah.
longer. So it was like, it went from having all these relationships to 50% of them left the business.
Wow.
So it was definitely hard. But again, it's like in this business, you always have to be on your toes and know that there's going to be times that there's going to be highs and lows and be ready for those lows. My first time around, I wasn't prepared for those lows. And so I made bad investments and, I had to make a lot of changes in my finances. So this time around, I'm prepared and I understand that it's going to come with this type of industry. And so it's very similar to 2008. It almost feels like that kind of, wow, what are we doing? What's
It's
happening?
changing fast. Yeah.
Changing fast. It's like, whoa, we have to adapt to the new world. But it's different in so many ways because it's not like, the world's coming to an end and we're having like, this crazy real estate crash. It's not a real estate problem. It's just the
It's an
market,
inventory crisis.
an inventory
Yeah.
crisis. Yeah. So it's different, but it's similar in a lot of ways.
Okay, so what are you doing to prepare for this? Or once you realized the direction that we were headed, what did you start to do differently, or what did you start to change with your approach?
So again, it's a numbers game. It's getting out there and trying to find new relationships. More importantly, nurture the existing relationships, because a lot of loan officers and people lose sight of that. Is they always are looking for the next thing, and they forget about who is serving them, who is helping them. They don't focus on those relationships. And that's one thing that I think I really stand out is all the realtors I work with, I have very good relationships with, and I really do nurture and care for those friendships. It's not just a business transaction for me. It's more about, making them feel like we're extended family.
Yeah, and that's another thing. That's where I kind of wanted to go next, but about relationship building. So I think that in your bio, I read that you're closing what, 500 to 600 deals a year. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, that was 2021. I closed, I think it was like 560 units. This year, last year I closed about 350. This year, probably 250. So you could see the numbers are definitely changing, but COVID was a whole different animal.
Oh yeah, and the refi boom and everything else that came with that.
Yes,
All right.
exactly.
So what does the team look like, Cathy, in order to be able to do that? I'm sure you have an awesome back-end support staff, I would imagine, but what does the team look like in order to put numbers on the board like that? Because that's crazy impressive. I know that the stat for the average realtor sells like 2 or 3 or 4 homes a year. What does the average lender do a year? Do you know that?
Closings a year?
Yeah.
In what sense? Like units per month?
Units or volume?
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm hopefully on pace. I'm hoping, we'll see if I can hit 100 million. That's always been the minimum for me, is to always try and hit 100 million. That's just like at least the bare minimum. And that's, depending on loan size, your average loan size keeps going up.
Yeah, that's true.
The units are actually coming down because there's just not enough inventory, but the home prices are going up.
Yeah.
So I would say that's probably close to 200 units, 250. I don't know. It depends. I'd have to run those numbers because it's ever so changing.
No, but compared to the average, let's say the average loan officer, not you, you're not average. You're superb.
The average loan officer, what do they close?
Yeah.
I mean, I think to be decent and,
put food on the table,
20 million, 25 million a year to have a good living.
Mm-hmm. And what does the team structure look like in order to be able to support that much? Because obviously you have a lot going on. You have kids, you have family, you have distractions, I'm sure, as we all do. But that's a lot of servicing. So how are you able to structure that? And at what point did you realize it was time to start to build out a team or additional leverage for yourself?
Yeah. So when I started realizing that I wasn't getting back to people as quickly and my service levels were starting to I just wasn't okay. People maybe didn't notice, but I felt it. And at that point, that's when I had to make a decision to expand my team. And I remember sitting down and saying, okay, let me write down the things that I hate doing. And that's the first thing I'm going to give away.
That's a great exercise.
And that's exactly what I did. I was like, okay, I hate doing this. I hate doing that. Okay, great. I created a position. Here you go. This is what I'm looking to hire for. And that's what I did. And, years later, now I have 2 assistants, a business development coordinator, and a pipeline manager that helps kind of once the loans are in, they kind of just help foresee the pipeline so that, things are going smoothly and the clients are still happy even all the way through the end of the process. But, we also have processors and underwriters, but that's not necessarily directly on my team, but it's, I have a pod of people that help support me.
Yeah, the pipeline manager, that must be huge, because I remember in my beginning days in real estate sales, you felt like it was just kept going and going and going. And we have so much in the pipeline. Then you close everything. You're like, oh my God, I have to go back to work.
Yes. I mean, the last thing you want to do as an originator is to have to stop what you're doing productive tasks, money making tasks, to have to go in and stop and fix a problem, or, call this client or chase this person up and, hey, I need your documents. Hey, this is a problem. It's just, you really want to try and stay away from that if you can, and structure your business in such a way that you have people that do it better than you, that will help you focus on the important tasks, which is my most important task, which is being a rainmaker.
Mm-hmm. And your relationships with your agents, I'm sure, are rock solid, and the referral pipeline.
That's right.
Also, let's talk to the working moms out there, right? I know that there's going to be a lot of people that listen to this that wonder, how does Cathy do so much? I can't even imagine how a working mother could do as much as you do. So what was that process like, just when you started to grow the family and juggling, and what would you say to them?
Yeah, so it's if somebody tells you a balanced work-life balance, there really is no such thing, right?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
That's my personal opinion. I think you try and you do the best you can, and I think for me, one of the things, being a mom to me was the most important thing overall. And so I always felt like when I'm with my kids, they have my undivided attention, and when I'm at my job, that has my undivided attention. Obviously, if my kids, something happens, they get
Of
sick,
course.
that's obviously going to happen. But I started to just give away like things that, and listen, it costs me, right? I mean, you have to pay more people to do certain services to keep your relationships and your clients and everyone happy, where they don't skip a beat. But you just hire more people. And so I have like weekend coverage. My assistants one works later than the other, and they kind of offset, so that there's always coverage. There's always someone there to, help our clients, make sure that they're, accessible, when I can't be, because I choose to be with my family. So I think that that's, how I just basically did it, to be able to do both and still do what I love, and be a fantastic mom and wife.
Yeah, and this is all, like, you say all this very nonchalantly and very like calm and smooth, but this is like an undercover masterclass on leverage and how to scale up to the next level. Because
Yeah.
what I think happens is that many people reach a certain level of production, and then it just falls off a map, or they burn out, they burn up relationships or what have you. And I think that, like, in the real estate community, I've seen it happen between like 40 to 50 deals a year. I don't know what the magic number is in the mortgage business, but I would assume it's probably about the same.
Mm-hmm.
And then unless you take that leap of faith in order to start to put those things in place, like, I joke with people, but it's probably not a joke. I remember towards the end of 2020 and then 2021, I think I got like PTSD from the phone would just
Yeah.
not stop ringing.
Yes.
And it got to the point, like, luckily I have two phones. I have the business phone and I have the personal phone. And I think that was my only sense of normalcy, because there was a way to escape. But I
Yes.
remember, like, I would do anything to try to find the weekend coverage or the night coverage
Yes.
just to get a breath of fresh air.
Yes.
And I can only imagine that a lot of that stuff is probably what you went through on your climb up, because you're doing so many units, and you just made the effective hires to put that in place so you could continue to stay normal
That's
and
right.
not burn everything else down.
One person can only do but so much. And I think, as the leader of a team, you start to, your role changes a little bit, and I always say a bad hire is worse than no hire at all. So it's very important to know how to look for the right people that are going to care and have the same work ethic and the same experience and knowledge, and the tasks that they're doing, that's going to be an extension of who you are as the person who's the brand. And so that's something that, over years of experience, I've learned to hire the best.
That's awesome. And what does the best look like to you?
I think the best for me is somebody that cares about what they do, always willing to learn, puts in the effort, and has, a good amount of experience in the knowledge base, where they do their homework, they spend the time to research things for me, to making sure that, guidelines and things, because in our business, there's so much information and so many things you can do that can go wrong, that if you misguide a client, it could really, mess so many different people up, like between the realtor, the attorney, the buyer, the seller.
Yeah.
There's so many moving parts. So you really have to make sure that they're diligent and they're efficient and they're smart enough to understand and be able to know what a guideline really means. And if they don't know something, that they are, intuitive enough or, have the ability to go and ask, if they're not sure about something. And so I think that really helps make somebody as an extension of you to be very good.
Okay. All right. Let's pivot here. So we're going to put our little coaching hat on here. So I coach people all day long, but I'm curious what you would say to this group of people that may be listening, that the market has stopped a lot of people in their tracks, right? And a lot of people, the business is down or they're just not generating at the same level that they were. I'm sure that the same is happening in your industry as it is in many others. But at the same time, there's a lot of people having the best years of their career and looking at new opportunities and growth. What would you say to the people, the lenders that may listen, or the realtors or business owners, that they've just gotten so far behind that now is the time to turn it around? How would you speak to them to tell them to change their ways or to really get into massive action?
Yeah, well, I also think we need to put things into perspective. And, it's funny, I had this talk with so many of my realtors who are like, oh man, I'm having such a terrible year. And I say, well, me too. Trust me. I mean, for me, it's like been a big difference. However, if you go back to normal markets pre-COVID and you compare those numbers, where are you in those numbers? That's the first thing I would always look at. So we can put things into perspective, right?
Yep.
But I also believe that this year and kind of the tail end of last year is the funny thing is back to basics, right? Everybody got so comfortable of just their phones were just ringing, right?
Yep.
Calls were coming in, business was coming in. They really didn't have to go out and solicit business and work. They worked hard, but a different hard. Now it's back to basics. It's back to, nurturing those calls, making those follow-up calls. If you have to make 30 calls a day, that's what you're going to do. Make sure you make those calls every day. If you're going to do your follow-ups, learn something about the areas that you're going to be servicing. If you're a realtor and you want to get into, a certain area, learn about that area and, educate yourself and, focus your time on relationship building and getting back out there because, we stopped doing that for a while because we couldn't. A lot of times COVID stopped us from even leaving the house. So it's really back to basics.
Awesome. I love it. That was a perfect answer for what should be a basic question.
Yeah.
And also, I think, especially from you, being 20 years in the business, when you look at everything from an average perspective, you're just, as long as you're playing the long game and you're not in this for 3 or 4 years and you're just trying to make a boatload of money and get out, I think it all works itself out as long as you continue to show up and be your best version. And in the long run, it's going to play out, but people just have to stay in order to see the outcome that they want.
That's right. And there's going to be highs and there's going to be lows. And the highs you enjoy, you appreciate, you really overwork yourself. And the lows, you're going to work hard, but it's going to be harder to get the business. And you just got to ride the wave and eventually, it's going to come back. Before you know it, rates are going to be back down and it's going to be crazy again, all these buyers, and it's just going to be crazy again,
Well, so that was going to be my next question. So a lot of people, I'd probably get some hate messages if I didn't ask one of the top lenders or loan officers in the country, where do you see us going, Cathy? What do you see the next year to 2 years looking like?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think that, eventually rates are going to come down is my opinion. And when they do, that's going to open up, sellers more willing to sell because now rates are a little bit more affordable and buyers coming out of the sidelines to buy. And so when you have that nice combination, we'll start to see a little more activity.
Yeah, we need that equilibrium back.
Yes. Yes.
Yesterday.
Yes.
But it's coming. It's coming.
Yes. It's only a matter of time.
All right, let's get into our few final questions here as we begin to wrap up. So talk to me about your daily habits and how you prime your mind, your body for success, because there's a lot of things going on at all time. I'm sure a lot of people need you to respond or need your attention. So just talk to me about your daily stuff.
Yeah, so usually, like the night before, I try to like look at my schedule for the next day, just prepare so I know what to expect. And I'm very, very much a planner. Everything's super organized. I'm very systems based. Everything is, very organized. And so every day I have pretty much a certain way that I like to do things. So, first thing in the morning, I usually try to, I don't know if I want to call it meditate, but I definitely try to have some quiet time just for me. I get up before the kids, before anything. I don't look at, emails or anything. I just kind of focus on myself and my thoughts. And then, usually I try to put a time aside in the morning for prospecting, where after I check my emails, I kind of look at everything, see if there's any emergencies, things that I need to get involved in or, respond to certain emails. Then I prospect for about an hour, where that's undivided time. I'm just simply following up with clients, reaching out to see if offers are accepted, how are people, doing, and just kind of focusing that time to do my reach out. And then, I also spend an hour a day reaching out to my sphere of realtors and just making sure and having my business development team. We have a call once a week where I'll sit down with them and just basically plan out, who are we targeting? What are we doing? Where do we need to focus our time? And so everything is super systematic, everything's super planned out. And, obviously then I work with clients of, making sure that I'm locking rates and, doing the things that I normally do. But it's pretty much try to keep my time organized and use that time management, because I've noticed so many people in our industry, they don't know how to manage their time. They get pulled in so many different directions, which I'm not that person. It's very much like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm focusing on. And I get a lot more things done that way.
Yeah. And what I really heard in that, and what I want a lot of other people to go back and listen to this again, is you're doing an hour of prospecting and an hour of your sphere follow-up every single day, correct?
Mm-hmm. Every day.
That's the recipe right there, folks.
Yeah.
I remember when I went full-time in the business in 2017, my coach and we had a rule that I couldn't go home until I made 20 contacts a day. Mm-hmm. And getting a lot of people to adopt that same philosophy can be painful at times. But I tell everybody that wants to know what's the secret, especially in the beginning, it's just contacts, because contacts creates appointments, creates closings, creates the life that you want to build. So it's amazing to hear you at the level that you're currently at still say that that's part of your daily regimen. So
definitely. Yeah. I mean, I reach out a lot of times because I really want to hear from my realtors. We have great relationships. So for me, it's like, it's great. I can reach out, or I can just say, it could be something as simple as, hey, by the way, just wanted to give you a heads up, this person sent their docs and the pre-approval's going out. It could just be something like that. But to me, that's touching, right? You're kind of reaching out and staying top of mind and letting them know you're here and you're appreciative of what they're doing for you, and, communicating, keeping that line of communication open, which I think is super, super important.
That's awesome. All right. Let's talk to the person right now that's debating. Maybe they're thinking about, do I go the college route? Do I get in debt for a couple $100,000? You didn't go the college route. I didn't finish my full bachelor's. So let's talk to that person about, like, how did you come to that decision? Obviously, you're extremely intelligent. You've built a great business and career. What was that decision-making process like for you? Because right now, I mean, when I hear what some people tell me that college costs now, I'm like, whoa. Like,
no, totally. Well, it was pretty simple. My parents couldn't afford college. And it was like one of those things like, do I really want to get all this debt before I even start my life? I'm going to have all this debt that I'm starting out with. And I really didn't like school, to be honest with you. I mean, I did great. I got good grades and I never failed any classes. I got, usually A's and B's. occasional C's.
Hmm.
But it was like one of those things that, I just never was a fan of school. And so for me, it was like, I was always a doer. I wanted to get out and I always had a job. I remember I got my first gig at like 11 years old. I was babysitting.
Hmm.
And I continued on. I mean, I never stopped working. So I just always loved the being in a work environment, right? And I
Yeah.
think that taught me a lot, and it helped set me up for business. And so for those that for those that don't feel like college is not for you, that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful. You're going to have to work really hard, and you're going to have almost like an entrepreneur type of love.
Yeah.
Um, and it's harder in a lot of ways by not having a college degree. But there's a lot of jobs that require a college degree. So like with my kids, I mean, obviously I'm saving for them. I'm putting money aside for them to go to college. I'm a big advocate of college. But I also feel like it's not for everyone. And so if my
I
kid
agree.
came to me and said, "Hey, mommy, I really don't want to go to college. I want to get into sales," I will say, go for it. Okay. Take the money and we're going to keep investing it and you could buy your first house with it. Like
Yeah.
those are the things that I'm, looking to be able to give those opportunities to my kids. And, it's really depends on the person and the type of career that they want to go into. Sometimes it could be simple as, the specialty. If you want to be, a mechanic, then go to school to be a mechanic. You don't need college. You just need a specialty school. So everybody's different.
Great perspective and great answer. All right, last question. So, when you reflect on the early days of building the team, is there anything that you would go back and do differently now that, you're 20 years in the game? Is there anything else that you would have done differently?
I mean, listen, I've made some mistakes along the way, right? I've had some bad hires, and that's how I've always said a bad hire is worse than no hire. So I've learned the qualifying questions to ask and to make sure that you really understand that role and what it is that you're looking for. Because sometimes we say we need help, but we're not really clear about what is it that we want to do. So just, kind of building out a roadmap, writing down your goals, because I used to laugh at people that would say to me, "Oh my God, like I write my goals down." I'm like, I have them in my head. What are you talking, And then all of a sudden I got put to a challenge and I did it. And man, it made a difference.
It makes
Because
a
then
huge difference.
you're now accountable. And now you're like looking at it on paper and you're going back and you're going, "Oh my God, like I didn't accomplish this, or I did accomplish this," and then you reverse engineer and you figure out, how do I get there? I want to get to this number, but that means how many people do I need to talk to? How many applications? How many, And so I wish I would have done that sooner, when I was always the one that was like, "Oh, I don't need to do that." So that's probably one thing I would say I wish I did sooner is, making those extra, push to just write things down and be a little bit more, systematic like I am today.
Yeah, I especially found the goal setting was huge, but then also journaling for me was one of the biggest ones that was also a huge push by my coach. And like, I would just journal about my passive income goals and how many properties I want to own. And now that I start to look back, I'm like, oh, wow, we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, totally. And then you can see and you could be proud of your accomplishments,
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And I think that like people are just different, right? Like some people can just keep it all up here and process. But even sometimes my wife asks me things like, "Okay, well, what are we going to do with that one? Or how are we going to flip this and whatever?" I'm like,
Yeah.
hold on a second. I need to go back and write. I need to map this out.
Yes, totally. Yes. And every year you go back and you look at, what your goals were. And it's just so it's exciting to see. And even you're going to have some shortfalls but it gives you something to look forward to next year, And so it's a great thing to do. And I wish I would have done that sooner and
I
didn't
agree.
listen to all those that did do it.
And the last thing I'll say on that is that what I'm finding now is that as we approach, like we're in August right now recording this, it seems like the year is just moving so fast. What I'm feeling like is now is the time more than ever to start early planning for what you want your next year to look like, because I think that that's going to just put you in such a position to just explode and just blow through your goals by starting now. So for anybody listening, do not wait until November or like that New Year's Eve party to say you're going to go out and crush it. Like, why don't you work on planning to crush it now. So,
Absolutely.
yep. All right, Cathy, this was awesome. I learned a lot about you today that I didn't know, and I'm glad that we could share this with all of our listeners. So for everybody listening, how can they get in touch with you? What's the best way to reach out for loan or advice or whatever you want to share?
Definitely. I would say my cell phone, which is 848-203-2272.
Oh, you're brave.
I know.
Hey, you got to go for it.
No junk calls, please.
That's
It's
it.
real
That's it.
business.
That's
No,
it.
no.
And where do you cover?
I cover pretty much, we cover everywhere. I mean, the states I'm personally licensed in is New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Florida. But the company is licensed in all 50 states, so I can help out when the need is there. But also email is also Cathy with the CATHY team@rate.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cathy. This is amazing, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.